We often hear talk of ascension in various spiritual circles, but what really is it? In this episode, we take a look at what this process is and why now is the time for humanity as a collective to make this great leap. Throughout the ages, humans have sought ways to fully realize our potential. Over the millennia, mystery schools have accumulated knowledge, understanding, and wisdom for how we can ascend both individually and collectively. This method for reaching new heights in our spiritual evolution is what is known as the art and science of ascension. Many people associate the idea of ascension with leaving the earth density or transcending the body. But this is a misleading concept. That is what happens after physical death, not while we're still alive. Ascension is not about leaving the physical body behind and escaping the earth. Rather, it's about ascending the body with us, taking it up to higher vibrations, while simultaneously embodying more of our full divine potential into this body. In order to do that, we have to transform and transmute the physical body into the body of light. There are many traditions that talk about this process. In the Tibetan and Eastern traditions, there's the idea of the rainbow body or the great perfection. In the Kabbalistic tradition, we talk about the Adam Kadmon, the perfected human. The ancient and secret Kabbalistic science of building the Merkaba, an ascension vehicle for our transformation, is still practiced today, although it is not what many in the New Age think it to be. Some even talk about the apotheosis of George Washington, which is intriguing, as we know many of the founding fathers of the United States studied with an initiatory path with true lineage roots in the Western mystery school tradition. And then alchemy talks about the philosopher's stone as the culmination of the great work. Hermes Trismegistus called himself thrice great because he fully attained the three parts of the philosophy of the whole world, meaning the perfection of the body, soul, and spirit. What is the scientific basis for this transformation of the physical body into a light body? The key is within the quantum physics and atomic consciousness, where we can learn to tap into what alchemists call the secret fire. It is the core essence of Source as it flows into our physical atoms and DNA. This source in the physical is within our own consciousness. Modern-day alchemist Dennis William Hauck says the alchemist believed that the driving force behind the evolution of matter, the connection between the mental and physical reality, was fire. This fire must operate at the quantum level within the zero-point field. In essence, alchemists sought to harness the secret fire, that power of higher consciousness, in order to access the central fire or divine spark within matter and draw it out. They believed that through this process they could transform matter into its ultimate perfected state. If we can learn to achieve a coherent state of being and have a daily practice with meditation every day, we can activate more and more of that secret fire within. This then draws to it what we can call the celestial fire or light, that is the smallest particle of consciousness from Source. This is the smallest building block of matter. It is at the central core of every atom. And this particle of consciousness is within the nuclei. It acts as a portal through which divine consciousness enters into manifestation. It is the essence of Source in this world. It has the seed of divinity within it. This seed is something that we, as conscious and aware beings, can tap into, using our own secret fire of consciousness to reach it. As we achieve a state of coherence within, we raise our vibration and activate that secret fire of our own quantum consciousness. We begin to then draw into us more and more of the celestial fire, more light from the universe. And as it begins to accumulate within us over time, this transmutes our physical body into a body of light. What are the indicators or signs that ascension is starting to happen? Well, to begin with, we may experience what could be called symptoms of ascension. As the light particles come in, they hit densities within our body and soul. And these densities may block the light or have difficulty interacting with it. These can be physical, mental, and emotional toxins or blockages. The light begins to break down these densities little by little. Now, some of these toxins that pollute our system may have become buried deep within and are currently in a passive state. And as that breakdown process starts, it moves them into a more active state, bringing them to the surface to be eliminated from the system. Physical toxins may get flushed into the bloodstream or other systems of elimination within the body. But at the emotional level, things unearth from the subconscious, and we may start to feel the emotion rise up. We may not know why we're feeling that emotion, but we are. It's like a detoxing or catharsis, a healing process where we first have to feel in order to choose to let it go. And at the mental level, we may also have belief systems come up into our awareness. We may ask, is this true for me anymore? We become aware of our belief systems and begin to question them and make new choices. And with any of these processes, there's always a choice. We can suppress or address it, and we can let it keep moving out of the system. With the physical detox, we may also feel symptoms like headaches or nausea, fatigue, or what we sometimes call density drops. The body is physically trying to fight off a toxin and eliminate it from the system. It's similar to when we catch a cold and the body's immune system is trying to fight it off. And in these cases, we need to make the right choices that support our physical healing process. Rather than ignoring the physical feelings or masking it with drugs or other addictions, we should listen to the body. It's telling us to slow down, rest, drink more water, or load up on those vitamins and minerals and herbs that will help you get well. Only when we give our body what it really needs to heal and become stronger can it push out whatever the toxin is. And with Ascension, we are raising our vibration within our physical body. So we want to avoid things that have denser vibrations or that alter our consciousness in a way that's not controlled and coherent application of the right tools. Things like drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, and the like can interfere with the process of ascension. In order to ascend, we must access higher consciousness by creating a sustainable way through our own inner alchemical process, rather than relying on external sources to shift us. It's really about eliminating the denser vibrations and things that weigh down our system. We also have to go through the healing process for emotional and mental trauma. These are also toxins to the soul and create energy blocks within our aura and mind. Now, sometimes the emotions can be stored within the organs or the tissues of the body. Mental belief systems can create blockages of the perceptions. And these are all the things that we need to work on clearing in order to ascend. Yeah, it will require a level of discipline, but it doesn't mean that life will be boring. Living the middle pillar lifestyle, like what we're talking about here, is full of joy, clear awareness, greater consciousness, and peace. True ascension is a process that becomes a lifestyle. We have the ability to access a broad spectrum of vibrations within. Of course, we can have a weekend experience and we can have a peak moment during that type of experience, but that doesn't mean we've integrated it into our life as our new foundation or base for life. Ascension is about raising our baseline through a cyclic process that we call the evolving triangle of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. We progress and serve through this process over and over again. And as we do, it raises our baseline, bringing the physical up to higher levels. We can have many peak moments as we go through this process. But even more important is that as we continue to follow this process of ascension, the more our new low points will be higher than our previous high points. And then, of course, the high points will also reach new heights. So what is the evolving triangle of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom? This teaching comes from the Modern Mystery School and is something that I have directly experienced as true. And it's a powerful way to live a meaningful life. It's also called the Hermetic science of ascension. Let's start with knowledge. What do we mean by knowledge? Well, it's about seeking new information that will help us to grow and progress. But knowledge must be applied if it's going to lead towards progression. We won't know it until we live it and integrate it into our lives. Knowledge for the sake of knowledge won't get us anywhere. But knowledge that can be applied to life and lead to progression, that's what we're seeking. Some of the most important knowledge is that of the self. Who are we? What are our gifts? What is our purpose? That's the knowledge we should be seeking. And rather than having the concept or idea of it, we must apply it. Through application, we grow in our learning, we refine, and we get results. Then we can always course correct if we're not applying it in the right way. And from this process, we then come to greater understanding of what was once a concept. We ultimately come to master it for ourselves. From here, in order to continue forward, we have to take that understanding and now strive towards wisdom. What gets us from understanding to wisdom? What can take us beyond our personal understanding? We've already applied it, we've integrated it, and we're living it. And this brought us to understanding. The only thing that can take us further now and raise our vibration up to wisdom is now stepping into an active role of service, serving with what we understand. If we have knowledge and start teaching the information without understanding, then we won't have a strong foundation to stand on. We have to work with it for a while through selfless service. Service is what raises our vibration up to higher planes to reach wisdom. What is service? Well, service is about helping others remember and progress toward their full divine potential. And there are steps in this process. The first 3 steps include service to self, service to others, and service to God, or the greater whole. And we start with service to self, which is about our own physical life. It's about having joy in life, taking care of our body, doing what we need to fill our cup. And it's not from a place of selfishness, though. Rather, we serve ourselves and fill our own cup so that we can truly serve others more sustainably. And from our overflow, we serve and flow to others. When we're not serving ourselves and we try to do so much for other people, we can get depleted. And when this happens, we won't be able to sustain service for the bigger picture or in the long run. Thus, we have to serve ourselves first. But we shouldn't wait until we're 100% good and perfect before we start to serve others. When we step into service to others from a place of selflessness, from love and honor, rather than from any kind of agenda or obligation, when we do it from the right place, we feel full of light, joy, and love from feeling connected to our own divinity. And we want to then help others remember their divinity and feel that love, joy, and connection as well. And when we are full of love, all we want to do is give, and we have plenty of energy to do so. Service to others is about fulfilling our soul. We actively pull the light into us from Source, and this fills us. From our overflow, we then flow it to whoever we are in active service to. This process raises our vibration because the light is filling us as we are flowing it to others. This is the method of how we raise our vibration through service. However, for it to truly work, we can't be doing it for our own sake. It has to be for a higher purpose, to benefit the greater whole. This then brings us to service to the Spirit or the divine. It is the great work. It's about a bigger purpose. We're no longer just serving one individual or small groups of people. Now it's a mission of helping create a better world, a world of peace. Truly helping humanity to awaken, to be a part of the shift. I, as an individual, am not going to be the one who does this on my own. but I can be a part of helping the collective to awaken and ascend. Being part of a mission that is aligned with creating a world of peace and balance, that fulfills our spirit and brings joy. And along that path of service, as we grow, our capacity to serve also grows. As we serve at that new capacity, we also feel stretched. So we still have to be serving ourselves, which allows us to continue growing. This then becomes a feedback loop. We grow as we serve. We raise our vibration as we serve. Here, we're not just learning from our own personal application and the results of our own life, but also through the reflection of those we serve. Through service, we gain a deeper and different perspective because the needs of others are different from our own. Thus, we integrate in a new way and learn a more universal application through the dynamic reflection of others. And through this process, we grow beyond ourselves and our own perspectives. This is what brings us to ultimately gain wisdom. And once we've achieved wisdom, have we then arrived? No. The wise man knows he knows nothing. So he or she always adapts an attitude of the beginner's mind. We empty our cup, remain humble, and continue to seek new knowledge in new areas so we can continue to grow and progress. When someone climbs the mountaintop and they're at the peak, they have this incredible vista. But at the peak, they then realize there's all these other mountains to climb. They see how much more there is. So they go back down, empty their cup, and seek the next mountain to begin a new climb. We are never so good that we can't become better. It is so important that we empty our cup. If we try to stay on top of the mountain, we stop growing, we stop flowing, we stagnate. We must stay humble, confident and strong, yet humble. And we can remind ourselves that we don't know what we don't know. There's always more room for growth. Thus, with the beginner's mind, we seek new knowledge and progression. Even while we empty our cup, we can never go back to where we were before because we've grown through the cycle. We know and understand more, and we are wiser. Our baseline is now at a new place, so we seek new knowledge, apply it, and progress, and through this we gain more understanding. Then we step into active service, and through that service we gain further wisdom. We see that there's more, so we empty our cup, stay humble, and seek new knowledge. And we begin anew to climb the next mountain. And this cycle goes on and on and on without end. Our true potential is infinite, and we are on an eternal journey of our spirit to become fully realized in our infinite potential. From the human perspective, it may seem overwhelming that this process is never ending. But from the spirit's perspective, we are eternal, and it gets easier and easier the more we do the cycle. It becomes a way of life. The key is to not allowing the ego to get attached to being the person at the top of the mountain. As the Hermetic principle of vibration says, everything moves, everything vibrates. There is no standing still. There's only movement, forwards or backwards, progressing or regressing. This ancient Hermetic science of ascension shows us how we keep moving forward, progressing, ascending, and raising our baseline. The art is in how we apply it, how we uniquely live it and express it, serving in our own unique way by harnessing our gifts and potentials that are ours. Thus, along the way, we have to come to know ourselves more, to know our unique gifts and way of expressing. We also must overcome our fears and the places where we might sabotage ourselves, where we don't really feel worthy or good enough. Through this process, we come to greater levels of recognition that we are all one. We are all connected. If I am attaining higher levels, but my brother and sister are not, we're not going to ascend. We have to do this together. It's all of us or none of us. Thus, we serve. The more we serve ourselves and others as divine beings, as embodiments of divine consciousness, the more we draw in the light, the celestial fire of the alchemists, and we transform into that body of light. Where are we as a collective in this process of ascension, and where do we go from here? To answer that, let's orient ourselves. In our human experience, we have multidimensionality. Now, there's a common thought among the New Age movement that talks about ascension into the 5th dimension. What are we really talking about? It's actually more like levels of expanded states of consciousness and vibration, rather than physical space-time dimensions. Ancient mystery school teachings say there are 12 dimensional levels within the physical, and 7 spiritual levels, and within each of these levels are many sub-levels. For example, in the modern mystery school teachings, we say that the first physical dimension of consciousness would be like the consciousness of the elements of earth, water, air, and fire. Or maybe we could think of the consciousness of a rock from the mineral kingdom as an example. With the second dimension, we describe the consciousness of plants, the plant kingdom as a whole, as well as some of the animal kingdom. At this level, things take on a group consciousness. For example, we know that the trees of a forest are really more like one entity. They are all connected under the soil through their root systems. Similarly, animals in the wild tend to run in herds and packs and flocks, again, operating as a unit. Now, in the third dimension of consciousness, we begin to evolve more towards individuated consciousness. For example, domesticated animals are given names. They are treated as individuals by humans, and they often can take on the personality attributes of their owners, yet they still often exhibit a loyalty to their pack or their family. Certain primitive humans of the past who lived much more simply than we do today, and who were primarily focused on just a connection to nature, they were also of a third dimensional consciousness, meaning their existence was usually in relation to being part of the tribe. They might have been very spiritual and in tune, but not so complex in their mental frameworks as we are today, with all of our science and technology and multifaceted systems. Now, as the majority of humanity evolved into the fourth dimension of consciousness, things became more complex. We started to engage the mind. We developed more advanced arts and sciences. Abstract thinking became overlaid on top of our emotional levels of being. And we also started focusing on ourselves as individuals. In our modern-day society, most of the masses are still operating at this fourth dimensional level of consciousness. How do we evolve from here to get to the next stage of development? Well, to answer that, let's take a look at how we evolve individually for a moment. Each of us go through all of the first 4 stages in our own development. As our physical body is growing and wiring itself, and our soul is being programmed through the early stages of life, from infancy to childhood, to our teenage years, into adulthood, we traverse through these dimensions or levels of consciousness. A baby is fully focused on stimulation from the 5 senses and interacting with the elements, feeling the air blowing on its face or the warmth of the body and needing to eat. This is a very physical level of awareness, a first dimensional consciousness. A child starts to become more attentive to the things outside, out in the garden, in nature. We might have an awareness of the fairy kingdom or imaginary friends. To children, the plants are alive, objects become alive, and we can talk to them. Adults may call it make-believe, but children operate mostly at a theta brainwave level, a level where we can more easily connect to spirit with our consciousness. But then when we get into our preteen years, we enter the third dimensional stage of our conscious development. Here, we become self-conscious about our social status among peers or our tribe, and it is a very emotional time in our developmental process. We operate more on instincts, impulses, and emotions rather than reason, intellect, or executive functioning. The fourth dimensional consciousness, though, is then related to our teenage years as we enter into high school and all the way into our early 20s. Here, we're learning more abstract concepts. We develop our logic capacities and our mental constructs. And on top of our emotional life, we become more multidimensional in our operations as a result. Now, the higher we go in these dimensions, the more complexity, the more multidimensionality our consciousness is able to perceive, consolidate, and make sense of. Now, at this stage, the majority of human thought and human ways of being on the planet today are still operating in the fourth dimensional state of consciousness. We've become a bit stuck as a collective. If we still lived in a spiritual society, our education system would be very different than what we have today. It would include spiritual wisdom and understanding of mythologies and archetypal forces. But instead, in our materially driven, utilitarian world, our education and programming has become about what's practical and what will make us become a good participant in our social system. What's needed is a balance between spiritual wisdom and physical practicality. We're meant to be going beyond this fourth dimensional way of thinking, and if our society and education were more balanced, we would naturally progress to the fifth dimensional consciousness by the time we are in our 20s. Well, what do we mean here by a fifth dimensional consciousness? Well, the fifth dimension is about archetypes. It's an awareness of the archetypes, such as astrological cycles of the sun, the moon, the stars, and how they influence us, plus an awareness of the archetypes of human consciousness, how they show up in our books and movies, in our lives and our relationships with other people. An awareness of asking the question, what archetype am I, or what combination of archetypes do I tend to fulfill in the lives of others? This fifth dimensional awareness is supposed to be the result of our education. But unfortunately, since we're not living in a spiritual society that passes on universal wisdom to the next generation, we're not getting the kind of education we really need to advance. When people step onto a path of seeking light and deeper knowledge, they do start exploring this archetypal awareness. Examples can include astrology, tarot, numerology, Kabbalah, and various mythologies and cosmologies from ancient mystery traditions of the world. These all offer windows into this archetypal way of viewing things. This step into the fifth dimensional state of consciousness is part of our progression to become spiritual adults. Physically, we might be adults and we may have advanced our knowledge, but emotionally and spiritually, most of humanity is stuck in that fourth dimension. Some are even stuck in the third dimensional consciousness due to unresolved traumas in youth or because of improper education and programming. Yet now, in our adulthood, through re-educating ourselves and through committing to our healing journey, we can resolve these lower levels and give ourselves the platform that we need to progress and ascend to higher levels of consciousness. The key is that we focus on progressing both physically and spiritually in a balanced way. If we are so focused on just our physical life and not the spiritual, we may progress physically, but we might feel poor spiritually. We may have physical wealth, but something inside is missing. On the other hand, if we progress spiritually, but we're neglecting ourselves physically, we won't attain our full potential at the physical level. This happens when we are trying to escape our physicality, for example, instead of living in this physical life. We must balance both if we are to master ourselves. We should be manifesting our full potential into the physical. When we do, things like money are no longer a limitation. Resources and the ability to make things happen are at our disposal. They no longer pose limitations for us. Rather than hanging out in fantasy land, we know how to make things happen, to manifest at the physical levels, yet in a way that is aligned with spiritual purpose. Now, to do so, we must harness both spiritual and physical sides of life in balance. As we progress in this ability, we eventually come to the sixth dimensional level of consciousness. The sixth dimension is conscious awareness of the higher self. Now, people on a spiritual path often access this level of awareness, But the question is whether we are living as our higher self. If so, our full-time job would be fully aligned with our purpose in life, not just a side thing to pursue when we have the time. We'd be coming from our higher self in our perspective and how we behave in situations, rather than from egoic reactions. Now, ego will always be there no matter how far we progress. So long as we are physical, we will have an ego. Thus, we have to learn to keep it in check. Now, the 6th dimension is really just the halfway point on the various levels of attainment. They keep on going to higher and higher levels of mastery and expanded awareness. The higher we attain, the more we should be able to also manifest and express our full potential into the physical through abundance, by bringing hope, being in service, harnessing the powers of the universe, and creating whatever it is we set our will to create. The highest level of awareness, the 12th physical dimension, is about oneness with divine source, or oneness with all that is, operating wholly and completely in the agape love. This 12th dimensional level of consciousness is fully tapped into the agape, living that oneness with our divinity, not from a place of ego, but from a place of pure awareness, knowing that we are worthy, that we are divine. Few people on our planet really truly ever attain such a level to date. But this is the level we are capable of attaining and are one day prophesied to reach. It is what the Kabbalists call the Adam Kadmon, or the perfected godlike human, with a fully transfigured light body and fully emanating the vibration of love. That is ascension to the highest level of consciousness, and it is attainable while in the physical body. This is what is spoken of as the philosopher's stone. As the emerald tablets of Hermes describe, "Therefore let all obscurity flee before thee. This is the strong fortitude of all fortitudes, overcoming every subtle thing and penetrating every solid thing." This is the attainment of merging with our immortality, merging our physical body with our eternal spirit. It is the state of a transfigured light body, with no more impurities or densities in the system that cause death or decay. This is the ultimate level. But for the most part, we're still operating at that 4th dimensional level, and we have a ways to go. Fortunately, though, there is a growing collective of people who are on a spiritual path that are living at that 5th dimension or even the 6th dimensional levels of consciousness already. They are helping lead the way for the greater collective to also make this shift. So what is our goal? Our goal would be ultimately that 12th dimensional level of unity consciousness and agape love. We have the chance to move the direction of the collective, but this depends on how much we implement a spiritual practice while also integrating it into the physical, not just living on the mountaintop or monastery, but immersing ourselves in life. The world, as a collective, is not going to ascend unless we do it together at some level. We are meant to be in the world, integrating a spiritual practice and philosophy into our physical life and society. And through this process, we bring heaven and earth together. If we, as a collective, can shift, if we can make the leap from the 4th dimensional consciousness just up to the 6th dimension, where everyone is fulfilling their unique purpose and aligned with their higher self, that's all we'd need to create Shambhala, or what we would call a world of peace and balance. And those who are leading the way by living the way and being true to that way, they're the ones to climb to the higher levels of attainment beyond the 6th dimension. How can a relatively small group of individuals help to shift the global collective? Well, as Margaret Mead famously said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Now, scientific research confirms that only a small percentage of the population is needed to shift into a coherent state. Once a critical mass of coherence has been achieved and sustained by this small percentage of people, then the rest of the collective can spontaneously attune to this new level. Intention experiments using random number generators conducted by the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Team concluded that with a sufficiently large community of individuals or organisms in resonance with each other and with a common purpose, the cumulative impact on the manifest physical and cognitive domains becomes significant and measurable. We can speculate on what that critical mass number may be. For sure, I believe it will be less than 3% of the world population. Some predictions narrow this critical number even further to be the square root of 1% of the population. If this critical number of people across the world dedicate themselves to their spiritual growth and sustainably achieve those coherent states by integrating with their higher self and living their life purpose, that 6th-dimensional level of consciousness, we will successfully make this shift as a collective. These dedicated souls are the trailblazers who have the courage and devotion to doing the great work. As individuals, these people likely will feel that they don't fit in with the rest of the world. But as they find each other and bond together as a spiritual family of lightworkers, uniting in one mission, they will find strength in each other. This is why working together in groups versus just on one's own can have an enhanced effect on the coherence field. When we also add to this effort true initiation into the ancient mystery school lineages, the impact on the collective becomes even more amplified and accelerated, with 10 times, 100 times, even 1,000 times the power. When we can get this critical mass of people, those who are dedicated to doing the work toward personal and spiritual mastery, we will tip the scales towards the awakening of the collective. The masses will then intuitively start to entrain into these new levels of consciousness. Those who are leading the charge will continue to lead as we then implement these new levels of consciousness to create a better world. From a Kabbalistic perspective, humanity is currently standing at the edge of what we call the abyss. The abyss is about separation. Here, we are faced with our fears, our limiting structures that don't work anymore, and the things that need to be changed or let go of. This point on our collective journey is a perilous one. It can be confusing and tumultuous with many doubts and fears that can arise here. And the keys to ascending across the abyss safely and successfully include things like moving beyond ideas of separation into unity and divinity, walking forward in faith and humbleness, cutting away the old to create room for the new, having the courage, love, and trust to let go of what no longer serves. And this is a point of reclaiming the true self, our true potential, reuniting with our divinity and recognizing that we are all one. This is the precipice we are at, the great leap in human consciousness and our collective evolution. What can we do right now to be part of this shift? First, we must build up our light body, our ascension vehicle. Many consider this to be the star tetrahedron Merkaba, but the deeper teachings from Kabbalah offer us a different perspective. From the perspective of pure sacred geometry, the foundation of all things is based on the triangle, the square, and the circle. As we expand these from 2D to 3D, they become the pyramid, the cube, and the sphere. These three geometries, when stacked one on top of the other, with the sphere at the bottom, the cube in the middle, and the pyramid at the top, become the outer form of the three-dimensional tree of life. This three-dimensional tree of life is the outer scaffolding that is our true Merkaba. This is something we have to build up within us. The art and science of how to do this properly is something we do through the Universal Kabbalah system of the Mystery School. For now, let's begin by visualizing the lower half of the body immersed in a sphere from the waist down. Then imagine a cube from the waist up to the shoulders, And finally, see a pyramid covering the head. Start with this visualization, holding it strongly within the mind for 30 minutes per day. After 1 month of stabilizing the outer scaffolding, begin bringing in the details now of the tree of life, working from the bottom up. Start first with the 2-dimensional tree, and then over time build up to working with the 3-dimensional tree. A proper knowledge is important, but if we don't apply it in our lives, nothing will change. Applying the knowledge requires the right keys, which the path of initiation gives us. We have the tools to really help us achieve those coherent states and accelerate our evolution. Using the tools that are going to work effectively takes commitment. It also asks us to do the work on behalf of the whole of humanity, because we are people who really dream of living in a world of peace, joy, and love, a world of Shambhala.